Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today, we're diving into one of the most isolated and secretive nations on Earth, North Korea. Beyond the headlines, there exists a system of laws so strict and baffling, it's hard to imagine daily life under them. We're talking about laws that dictate everything from who you can call, to what you can wear, and even what you can believe in. So buckle up as we unpack the top 10 most shocking laws that govern the lives of everyday citizens in North Korea. Let's start with something basic, making a phone call. It's something most of us do without a second thought. Whether it's a quick chat with a friend, a business call, or just checking in with family, making a phone call is a routine part of our daily lives. We take it for granted, right? The ability to pick up the phone and dial a number, knowing that on the other end, someone will answer. It's a simple pleasure, a convenience that has become second nature to us. Calling a friend overseas, catching up with family, simple stuff. These calls can bridge the gap between continents, bringing loved ones closer together, no matter the distance. It's a way to share moments, laughter, and even tears. But in North Korea, not so much. The reality there is starkly different. The freedom to communicate is heavily restricted, and the simple act of making a phone call can be fraught with danger. Making unauthorized international calls is a big no-no, and could land you in serious trouble. The government monitors all communications, and stepping out of line can have severe consequences. It's not just a slap on the wrist, it can mean imprisonment or worse. The government keeps a tight grip on all forms of communication, including who citizens can talk to outside the country. Every call is potentially monitored, every conversation scrutinized. The fear of being overheard is ever present. They believe contact with the outside world could expose citizens to dangerous ideas that challenge the regime's authority. The flow of information is tightly controlled to maintain the regime's narrative and prevent any dissent. So, imagine not being able to freely chat with a friend abroad or connect with family in another country. The isolation is profound, cutting off not just information, but emotional support and human connection. Now, you might be thinking, what about the internet? Well, not so fast. The internet in North Korea is a tightly controlled intranet, offering only state-approved content. Access to the global internet is virtually non-existent for the average citizen. The digital divide is stark, and the regime ensures that the outside world remains out of reach. Let's talk about the internet in North Korea, or the lack thereof. The situation is quite unique and unlike anything most of us are familiar with. While the rest of the world enjoys the vast expanse of the internet, North Koreans face severe restrictions. For most North Koreans, access to the internet is extremely limited, heavily censored, and tightly controlled. The government has a tight grip on what information can be accessed and shared. This means that the average citizen has very little exposure to the outside world. Forget about social media or Google searches. Popular platforms like Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram are completely off-limits. Even search engines like Google are inaccessible. This is a stark contrast to the freedom many of us take for granted. Instead, they have a closed network called Kwangmyong, limited to government-approved websites. This intranet is a far cry from the global internet we know. It's a highly controlled environment, where only certain information is allowed to circulate. It's essentially an intranet with state propaganda, educational materials, and curated news. The content is carefully selected to align with the government's narrative. This means that the information available is heavily biased and often misleading. A small percentage of elites have access to a more expansive internet, but even their activity is heavily monitored. These individuals might have slightly more freedom online, but they are still under constant surveillance. Their internet use is closely watched to ensure they don't access forbidden content. This restricted access is a way for the government to control the narrative and prevent dangerous ideas from infiltrating society. By limiting what people can see and read, the government maintains a tight grip on the population's beliefs and opinions. So, while the internet is a fundamental part of life for most of us, for North Koreans, it's a heavily controlled and censored space. The lack of access to the global internet means that North Koreans are largely cut off from the rest of the world, living in a bubble created by their government. This isolation has profound effects on their understanding of the world and their place in it. Imagine walking into someone's home and seeing large portraits of the country's leaders. In North Korea, every household must display portraits of Kim Il-sung and Kim Jong-il. These portraits are treated with almost sacred reverence. They must be prominently displayed and kept meticulously clean. Neglecting these portraits is considered a grave offense. This mandatory display enforces unwavering loyalty and devotion to the Kim dynasty. It's a constant reminder of the regime's power and the expectation of absolute obedience. In many countries, the freedom to move freely is a fundamental right. People can walk through bustling streets, enjoy outdoor activities in parks, and travel from one city to another without any hindrance. This freedom is often taken for granted, as it is an integral part of daily life. But in North Korea, such freedom is a luxury reserved for a select few. The country is known for its strict control over its citizens, and movement is heavily restricted. Militarized checkpoints and constant surveillance are a common sight, making it clear that freedom of movement is not a given. For most North Koreans, traveling even within their own country requires government permission. Citizens must queue at government offices to obtain travel permits, and even then, their movements are closely monitored. Checkpoints with guards are strategically placed to ensure that no one travels without authorization. Imagine needing official approval just to visit a different city or see family in another province. This level of control extends to every aspect of life, making spontaneous travel or visits to loved ones nearly impossible. The barbed wire fences and controlled access points serve as constant reminders of the restrictions in place. This restriction on movement is a powerful tool of control. The government uses it to maintain a tight grip on the population, ensuring that dissent is minimized and loyalty is enforced. Propaganda posters and surveillance cameras are omnipresent, reinforcing the message that the state is always watching. By limiting travel, the government can control the flow of information and maintain tighter surveillance. This prevents the spread of ideas that could challenge the regime and keeps the population isolated from the outside world. Security cameras and guards are a constant presence, monitoring every move. It also reinforces isolation and limits exposure to the outside world. The border is heavily fortified with barbed wire, and rural areas remain isolated, cut off from any external influence. This isolation ensures that the regime's narrative remains unchallenged and the population remains under control. Traveling abroad is an even more distant dream, usually reserved for government officials or select groups. These individuals are carefully chosen and monitored to ensure they represent the regime's interests. For the average North Korean, the idea of seeing the world beyond their borders remains a distant and unattainable dream. Let's talk about what you wear. In many parts of the world, fashion is a form of self-expression. But in North Korea, clothing is subject to strict government regulations. The government enforces dress codes to maintain uniformity and prevent expressions of individuality or Western influence. Men are expected to wear conservative suits or work uniforms, while women wear dresses or skirts below the knee. Experimenting with hairstyles is not an option, with only a limited number of approved styles. These dress codes suppress individual expression and enforce conformity. Let's talk about career aspirations. In North Korea, the government decides what job you'll have. From the moment you finish school, your career path is predetermined. There's no job hunting or interviews. The government assigns you a job based on what they deem best for the state. This stifles individual ambition and creativity. Changing jobs without permission is not allowed. Your job is considered a duty to the state, not a personal choice. For many, religion provides comfort and guidance. But in North Korea, openly practicing religion can land you in serious trouble. The government promotes atheism and views religion as a threat. Engaging in unauthorized religious activities can result in severe punishment. This suppression of religious freedom is another example of the government's control over citizens' lives. Imagine a world where every media outlet parrots the same government-approved narrative. In North Korea, all forms of media are strictly controlled by the state. Consuming foreign media is forbidden and punishable by law. The government blocks access to outside information to maintain their authority. Picture this: the sun sets and the streets fall silent. In North Korea, strict curfew laws dictate when citizens can be out. Staying out past curfew can have serious consequences. Curfews are enforced with patrols and checkpoints. Valid reasons to be out past curfew are limited to essential workers or emergencies. These curfews control citizens' movements and maintain order. Now, for the most chilling law, the 3 generations of punishment. If you commit a serious crime against the state, your entire family could be punished. This includes parents, spouse, children, and even grandchildren. Even if they had no knowledge of your crime, they could face imprisonment or worse. This law instills fear and obedience in the entire population. It's a way for the regime to maintain control and suppress dissent. Well, there you have it, a glimpse into North Korea's restrictive legal system. These laws paint a stark picture of a country where individual freedoms are sacrificed for state control. It's a reminder to cherish and protect the freedoms we often take for granted. Thanks for watching. If you found this video informative, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more content like this.